and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking to you about how you can get an AP job in 2021. We'll be speaking about the experience you need, the application, preparing for the interview itself, and what you need to do after the interview. The timestamps will be in the description below if you want to click through. So with all that being said, let's get into it. So one of the number one questions that I get asked is how much experience do you need to become an assistant psychologist? And this question is really hard to answer because it's like, how long is a piece of string? But I will try to answer this question as best as I can, and I think to put it in more concrete terms, so what I would do is look at an assistant psychologist person specification. You'll find this under any of the assistant psychologist jobs that are listed out there. There will always be a job description and a person specification. Now what I want you to do is open up that person specification and see how many of the points you can tick off and say that you have. Looking at this person specification for an assistant psychologist job, do you have about 80% of the criteria listed? Now if you have 80%, I'd say definitely apply, because that other 20% you can just like blag it, and they understand that you're not the full package yet. They understand that you need to learn. And an interesting fact that I've heard quite a few times is that men are more likely to apply for jobs that they aren't fully qualified for in comparison to women. So all you girls out there, apply for the jobs even if you think you're underqualified. Now, if you don't have that 80%, what experience do you need and how can you get the relevant experience? So when they say relevant experience, they mean things that will give you those skills listed in the person specification. Those jobs tend to be things like support worker roles, healthcare assistant roles, honorary assistant psychologist roles, but that's not paid, mentor roles, even like tutoring, ABA tutoring. I have a whole video on what experience would be good for assistant psychologists, so go check that out. I'll leave it in the card up there or there. So really it's experience that allows you to be at the front line with the service user, and that way you can really learn what person-centered care is. Okay, so moving on to the application now. For the application, you need to go to NHS jobs and then select the assistant psychologist job that you want to apply for, and then fill out the form. Now part of this form will be filling out your CV, your qualifications, and then there's a bit called the supporting information. And that is probably the most important thing that you're going to be filling out during this application. Now my top tips for writing the supporting information is keep it concise, keep it to around 800 words. I feel like that's the sweet spot. You have to remember that these people are reading hundreds of applications. Try to help them out a little bit. But when I mean concise, I wouldn't use bullet points. I know some people do, but I don't think that's formal enough. So I personally would recommend just keeping it concise, stick to the point, and just get on with it basically. But another tip for writing the supporting information is to use the person specification and say how you have gained that skill. So for example, if the person specification point was something like ability to work flexibly, you will say in the role of blah blah blah, I learned how to work flexibly because I had to do this, and obviously you'd make it sound 10 times better, but that's the gist of it and how you'd kind of form that sentence. Another tip, and I know it's so tempting, but do not copy and paste. It's okay to have a kind of template, but I wouldn't even call it a template. You really should be writing a new application for each and every role you're applying for. What I used to do is just use one application and kind of like look at it while I was writing up a new one, just so that I'd remember some of the points and remember the way that I had written it, but I wouldn't really use it as a template as such. I think it looks very generic and they can definitely see that. One of the reasons why I really would avoid copy and pasting is because it doesn't show how passionate you are about the service or the client group that you will be working with. Now another question that I get asked literally all the time is how do you prepare for an interview? Firstly, congratulations for getting an interview. That is fantastic. Like, you've gone over the first hurdle. Well done to you. In terms of preparation, first I would review the trust values. So what I mean by that is how can you show that you have those trust values within yourself? For the trust that I work in, the trust values are open, compassionate and empowering. Before my interview, I thought about different scenarios where I have shown that I have got those different values. Now if you're not applying for an NHS assistant psychologist job, then maybe search the company name, so Elysium Ethos. Another thing which I found helpful was to research the client group and research what challenges they may face and how you would support them with those challenges. It may also be helpful to think about the barriers to therapy that they may face and how you as a clinician will help them to overcome those barriers. What I did for my final and successful interview was I took the person specification and annotated it. So what I would do is I would look at one of the person specification points, and then I would think about any situations where I have used or shown that skill, and then I would reflect on that point and that situation. So when we say reflection, what we really mean is just what you've learned from a situation or an experience and what things may have impacted you in that scenario. Now, reflection is the most important thing for you to do in the interview, so it's really important that you prepare in that way. Okay, so now that you're in the interview, what do you need to do? The first thing you need to do is breathe. Okay, take a deep breath before you go in, and before you answer each question, just make sure you breathe. I have the tendency of, when I'm nervous, to speak really fast and to hold my breath. It's okay for you to ask for them to repeat the question. It's okay for you to ask for a moment to think. It shows that you're being reflective. If anything, that shows a really good skill rather than you just like rushing into everything that you do. And now I'm going to say it to you so that it's like really in your heads, but you need to just get it in there. You need to reflect during your interviews, guys. Otherwise, you're just not going to get the job, okay? And it's like, but just do it, okay? With every single question, reflect. And even if it doesn't seem like you can reflect, make it a reflective question somehow. I don't care how, but just reflect. When you reflect, you need to answer the question in this kind of way. Now, there are loads of other ways to reflect, but this is just how I do it. When they ask you a question, think. What situation are you going to talk about, and describe it. That's your little storytelling part. So what is you analysing that situation, thinking about what went well, what didn't go well, like why is that event important and why did that mould you as a person. Now what, you're thinking about like now what are you going to do going forward. How have you learnt from that situation and from the things that went well, the things that didn't go well. How are you going to use all of those things in future similar scenarios. That's how I reflect. And guys, just please reflect, okay? Just reflect, please. But you probably think I'm going to stop there, like the interview's done, like Shaz, what do I need to wait around for? No. After the interview, what I want you to do is write down all of the questions that they asked you. And I want you to also, if you can, write down how you answered them, just bullet points. But this will just allow you to, if in the future you have another assistant psychologist job, you can review these questions and practice them, and then you have a better idea of what they're going to ask you. You'll feel a bit more prepared, and also you can learn from your mistakes. Think about how you answered the question. Did you hit the nail on the head? Were you waffling on? Was it too short? Was it too long? Were you reflective? I don't care where you write it on a piece of tissue paper for all I care. You're gonna forget about all of it. As soon as you step out of that room, you're just gonna poof out of your brain. So just make sure you write it down as soon as possible. Now, after the interview, it usually takes about 3 days to hear back from them. That was the case for all of my interviews anyway. And in those 3 days, be kind to yourself. Try to think of all the things that you did well rather than all the things that you did wrong in the interview, because by the end of the day, guys, you got to the interview phase, and that is fantastic. I mean, it took me over 20 applications to get my first interview, so you just have to remember how many other people didn't get that interview and just be grateful for that and say well done to yourself for getting that far. So now you're waiting for that call, and it will be a call on a withheld number, so make sure you have those calls unblocked and make sure you answer those calls. Even the ones where I didn't get the job, they gave me a call, which I really appreciated. And when you are on that call, make sure to ask for feedback. Don't feel shy about it. And I know it can seem quite intimidating because, like, why would you want to hear about all the things that you did wrong? But that's the only way that you're going to learn. Have some questions maybe prepared for them and say, oh, like, for my next interview, what do you think I could do better? What was I lacking? How was it scored even? All of these really important questions. And now, I know that this video is for an assistant psychologist job, but if your main aim is to get onto the clinical doctorate, then you don't actually need to be an assistant psychologist. I know many trainees who were never assistant psychologists and worked as other things before that. So just because this can seem like the the epitome of like a psychology graduate job. It's not at all. And you can definitely get really relevant, valuable experience that will get you onto the doctorate in other roles. It doesn't have to be an assistant psychologist job. Great, so that was my very quick run through of how you can get an assistant psychologist job in 2021. I'm wishing you all the best of luck, and my emails are always open if you do want some support. So please give this video a like if you liked it, and subscribe for more content like this. And until next time guys, I'll see you later. Bye. Job in 2020. Oh shit, we're in 2021.